first one comes from LC79 Tourer 26. This was on my Nano VNA repeater signal video. He says, thanks for that, Hayden, a very informative video. What does the radiation pattern look like with real ground switched on, as ground reflections will alter it a bit, as will anything in the Fresnel zone? Granted, it is no simple matter to calculate these effects over terrain such as in your situation, but it would be interesting nonetheless. You've got to love these Nano VNAs. They have brought so much that was out of reach to all of us except for just in a few recent years. Cheers. So here is the model that I showed in the video. And what I've done is I have turned on, rather than free space, I've turned on real ground. The height is 5 meters above the ground, which it kind of is. The material I put is aluminium pipe. The ground setup I've left as just by default. The ground is very rocky, so I don't really know that well what to put in here, but I've just left it as default. Hit start, and this is what our pattern now looks like. So at 4 degrees, roughly 4 degrees above the horizon or so is where it's saying our main lobe is. As you can see, there's must be a bit of ground gain here. 3.9 degrees, bit of ground gain, 10.2 dBi modeled. You can see that there's quite a substantial lobe there as well. But that's with the antenna modeled sort of above the horizon type of lobes. So if we have a look and rotate this around 180 degrees so that we can see what it looks like underneath the antenna, and you can see there that our lobe is about at 7 degrees roughly, it's saying. Now that's pretty close to what my down tilt angle was. My down tilt angle in that original video is about 8 degrees. So it's saying that it's about 6.7. So you could say, this is, pretty close to what you want. So why don't you just leave it and not incorporate any down tilt? But I'm still going to play around with it. If we go to put the down tilt in and incorporate that in, you can see there that it actually sort of flattens out our model here. And we're still sitting at about 7.3 degrees for the main lobe, but especially around this bit here, you could see that around about 21 degrees below the horizon, yes, it sort of flattens it out a little bit, and you don't have, these massive lobes out this way. So it does make a little bit of a difference, but anything with modeling, of course, is sort of theoretical, and it's going to change depending on your environment and surrounds. So that's the whole point of the thing, is it's a bit of experimentation. But thank you very much for the comment. Next comment comes from Rob Canada. That was very interesting. Will you be doing some recorded signal tests with the phase shift in and out? If possible, a few fixed antenna locations showing the before and after results. Yes, so I will be doing that. I'm going to have a couple of things to test with. One is my spectrum analyzer over there, so I can get a calibrated signal measurement. I'm going to plug it into a couple of antennas, one here at home because I can hear the repeater rather strong, one at another location in the middle of the city, and then hopefully I can arrange a couple of others. It would be good to be able to do signal strength measurements sort of on the fly, so that while I'm at the repeater site making the changes, putting the different delays in, I could then get a result from maybe several different stations if they all had a way of measuring the signal. S meters are they're not that accurate, and even if it changed by a couple of dB, you're not really going to see it on an S meter. So, and if you're using a handheld or something inside, it's not really calibrated because you're moving around all over the place and there's different variables. So we want a reference antenna outside that's plugged into a calibrated signal level. So we'll see how it goes. We might be able to use maybe I've got a tiny SA, so there's a second unit that I can use. Can use the spec and I've actually got two spectrum analyzers, so we might be able to get a couple of readings. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when we put that delay in and when we take it out. So thank you very much. So the next comment was from Bond 2025. You didn't show any real test results. I'm a bit disappointed with that. You didn't show us a reception test at a mobile station and at the base. I can answer the question because I only filmed that video the other day and I'm still measuring out the delay lines on the bench here. I've got a couple of them ready. I'm still going to make a couple more. And also at the repeater site, it's under probably about 3 feet of snow at the moment. So I can't get to the repeater site. So that's going to have to wait. I would have used a completely different antenna setup. I would have put the antennas nearer the pole to give a cardioid pattern and put the splitter near the aerials. Well, we didn't put the antennas closer to the pole because we didn't need that pattern, because we still needed a how many angle? 180 degrees, roughly. Yeah, maybe a little bit more than 180 degrees of coverage. Sort of directly behind, we didn't really need that because of the fact that that's sort of out in the middle of nowhere, but we still needed a little bit more off to the side and to the back, so that's why we spaced it out a little bit more. We also didn't put the splitter near the antennas because the splitter is not an outdoor rated unit, and I already explained in the video why we didn't use a phasing harness for splitting, because that can just be another point of failure, especially when you get ice and water, ice melt, water get in, causes all sorts of problems with a phasing harness. Sometimes you don't even realize that the pattern shifted, you've gotten water in the phasing harness and your pattern goes everywhere, and it just means more things you have to fix on top of the antenna. You can then easily adjust the cable for different phasing, the cable to just one aerial. Yeah, you can, but again, then you need to get up, you need to change it, and you need to get back down, test it, get back up, change it, get back down. It was much easier to just run, in our case, several cables, 2 of equal length to each antenna. It was just simple. And then we could do the changes down in the repeater hut. It goes on further. Using a 3-element beam at a downward angle would be far better than the 2 dipoles and give more gain and better coverage. A 3-element beam has a little bit more gain, yes, but you do have a reflector behind you. So whilst I said too that you're not going to get a lot of signal behind, you're also going to lose your signal off to the side. If you look at a 3-element Yagi, you do have significant nulls off to the side of the Yagi. So I don't think that's going to work. You're going to have a pretty robust antenna at a site which cops 170 km/h winds, ice, snow, etc. Why make it more complicated and have to use far more power up 2 bits of coax only to lose power splitting it between the 2 inefficient aerials? Well, that is incorrect, because it's not complicated at all. We're going to be feeding the same amount of power out of the duplexer or out of the repeater into the splitter. You're going to have 3 dB, so you're going to have half power going to each antenna. It doesn't matter whether your cable is just one piece of cable and you put the splitter at the other end. It's still the same amount of power. It's going to get split at the other end. So it doesn't matter where you put the splitter, you're still going to have the same amount of power coming out each antenna. And I would disagree. It's not an inefficient antenna. A dipole is definitely not an inefficient antenna. Jeremy Hunter 1459. This was on another video. This was on talking about the Radio Oddity GA5WB handheld. I prefer the analog GPS on the handhelds, not rely on APRS if a tower is down. So APRS is not really reliant on a tower being down. APRS is kind of like a mesh network. Lots and lots of different APRS stations can then talk to one another, and they can obviously feed back to the internet as well. But you can also have RF only APRS, so you don't necessarily need the internet. So you don't need to necessarily rely on the internet and a tower going down. But fair point. Sure, you can use the analog GPS on a handheld as well. KN6VBW. Next video would be good to learn how to find the velocity factor of your cable, since the same type of cable will be different between manufacturers and even batches for the no-name wholesalers. This was on the Measure Your Coax VNA video. Yes, that would be an excellent video, and I actually got a comment on my video, and I'll pop it up here quickly. I pinned it in that particular video about updates to my Nano VNA that is allows you to do a direct cable measurement. And one of those things is you can actually, if you know the physical length of cable, you can measure out the physical length. You can enter in the physical length of cable, plug it in, and what it will do is it will tell you roughly what the velocity factor of that cable is. So very, very handy to figure out the velocity factor of cables that you don't really know about. Ash Mosky says, I can't believe it took me 2.5 minutes to realize the Nano VNA has end connectors. Yeah, so my Nano VNA, which confusingly, it is not technically a Nano VNA, I think. It kind of is, kind of isn't. basically a simple vector analyzer. Mine is an SAA-2N. It's got the same layout and everything of a Nano VNA. It's still referred to as that. And yes, it's got the N connectors on the end. And I got this one because I think it's got a much larger coverage. It goes all the way up to 3 gigahertz. And also the N connectors are something that I use a lot. So it just made sense to get this one. Yeah, Hugo V. Oh, I better pronounce his name properly. Is it Hug OV? Hug OV or Hugo V? 392. It's pronounced It's pronounced S11, not S11. The numbers are indices in a 2x2 matrix. Okay, fair enough. S11. There we go. I pronounced it correctly. No, to be serious, yes, I know I made a mistake in the video, but I left it in just so I could get comments like this. So thank you. The Eki Man, I'm looking to do something similar at my place. This is the best base antenna comment on the Diamond V2000. How far above your handrail is the antenna, and how do you find the aluminium pole in high wind? That's a very good question. The aluminium pole in high wind is fine. We've had massive winds over the last couple of days. It's still going on outside at the moment, actually. And I've got it braced in 3 positions on the pole. I think it shows it in that video. Roughly about 3/4 of the way up the pole. It's a 6.5 meter aluminium pole, 3 millimeters wall thickness. 6 millimeters wall thickness. Yes, 6 mil wall thickness. It's pretty thick walled, so it doesn't move too much. So it's fine in high wind with that antenna on the top, and especially being braced up rather high. How far above your handrail is the antenna? It is, well, it's above my head height. It's probably, I reckon it's about 3 meters. 3 meters to the base of to the bottom of the antenna where the mounting tube is, and then you've got the antenna from there on. So yeah, it's pretty it's pretty high above the bottom of the railing. Freddie here says, if FT8 gets people to using their radios, then that's a good thing. They might eventually move on to discover other sides. This is we have a major problem with FT8 video that I did, and wow, didn't the comments go off on that video? I agree, Freddie. I think it is a great thing. I think FT8 is a good thing. I use it all the time, and I think a lot of people missed that in the video. But yes, the whole point of it was to try and get other people to discover other facets and to try and move on to other things, especially when the signals are so strong on FT8 that something else might be open, so SSB, CW, etc. But I covered that in that video. Got a lot of people upset, but I don't think they really understood the context of the video. I definitely wasn't bagging FT8 out. I was saying that there was a problem that everyone is sticking to FT8 and maybe not discovering these other ones. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. You can go and watch the video. And by the way, all of the videos that I reference with these comments will be down in the description below too. MRDX7388 says, operating FT8 at the peak of the solar cycle is a waste. I disagree with that, because I think that it's not a waste when you're operating on some of the bands that I mentioned in the video, such as 6 meters, 10 meters on HF. Depends on what your operating style is. It could be. I know a lot of people, and rightly so, in the comments said that, they struggle with harder hearing, or they wish not to talk to someone, or they might be at work and they can work amateur radio. That's awesome. Love it. Great. Yeah, FT8 definitely has its place when it comes to those things. And I just think that we want to, take advantage of the solar cycle, the peak of the solar cycle, as much as we can. It's a very disturbing and disappointing new release from my favourite radio company. Man, where is the true, in capital letters, innovation nowadays in amateur radio? So, Dave, I replied on this comment and I said, what would you like to see and suggest? Apparently, there's no innovation from ICOM anymore, which I disagree with. The 7760, this was in reference to, which is the radio with the remote head and moving the RF deck out from the remote head, which is sort of what they have done with the IC905. So very strong opinion on this. So I didn't get a reply back. So, but yeah, I don't really. I think that ICOM's definitely innovating. I think they're definitely innovating in that space. And you can see the other manufacturers are also innovating. Yaesu coming out with their new radio as well. Kenwood's also, getting back into the space. I'm not sure about sort of innovating. They're sort of sticking with the same thing, but don't know. yeah, be interested to know your thoughts. Next one is N8XS. This is just a general comment, which I thought was great. I was looking for a quick antenna to throw together to grab CY9C. Built this last night, and this was the easy to build 10 meter vertical flower pot T2LT antenna. Built it with an old 13 meter piece of coax hanging in the garage, ran it up to the top of a 12 meter spider beam. First VNA run had it resonating at 29 megs, added 50 mils to each side of the dipole. Bob's your uncle. Resonated at 28.2 megahertz, SWR 1.27. Then he hooked it up, and in the first 20 minutes had FT8 QSO, South Africa, which I think's awesome because I struggle to get South Africa from here, Croatia, Belize, Serbia, Bulgaria, etc., all those countries. And I think he sent me an email. When he sent the email to me, he also showed the other countries worked, and I think Australia was in there as well. So that's awesome. So well done. Good to see that you had some success with that antenna. Steve Wheelie 7874, not trying to be smart, but what happened when you need to mow the lawn? So this was talking about the DX Commander HF vertical antenna that has the radials that sits on top of the lawn. Can you bury the ground plane under the ground, say 20 centimeters? Also, I hope my dog does not play tug of war with the ground plane. Yeah, you can bury the ground radials if you want. Callum also, I think, sells the pegs. With the kits now, the green pegs, if I can find them, I'll put a screenshot over the video now and show you what I'm talking about. And basically, you can knock those pegs into the ground with the radials, and eventually over time, what will happen is the radials will then eventually get, the grass will grow over the top of them, and you'll be able to just mow straight over the top of them. So, but yes, you can bury them as well if you like to. So that I just take mine out, I coil mine up and put them aside, mainly because I don't have the ability to dig up my lawn, so I just set them down, and when I need to mow the grass, I just take the antenna down. It takes about 5 minutes, mow over the top of it, and then put it all back up again. AJ Fogarty Fan 8245. Wish both Icom and Yaesu made this and the IC705 radio with 100 watts HF capability. So this is talking about the new Yaesu FTX1F portable radio. If you want to run QRP or reduce power for field ops to conserve battery power, you can just dial back the output level. Would be a great replacement and upgrade to radios like the IC7100. So I get a lot of these comments about when I'm talking about the new Icom's new Yaesu, saying, we should have like a shack in the box radio. And I agree that I think the 7100 probably does need a little bit of a refresh. That thing, it would be good to get something like that's 100 watts mobile in the car. The only problem that I see, and probably the reason why it's not happening, is because of the threat it would be to the existing lineup of radios. So if you've got, say, a 100 watt mobile radio that's in the same form factor as a 7100, but it has the front end like a 7300 or a 705, then is that going to hurt 705 sales? It probably is going to hurt 705 sales. Same with a 7300. Even though the 7300 is relatively old, would you buy a 7300 with just HF and 6 meters and 100 watts, or would you buy a 7100 upgrade with HF 6 meters? So the 7300 would then not sell as many units. I think it might be a bit of a threat to the existing lineup of radios. They've kind of got this lineup of 7300 is the HF 6 meter radio. Then if you want 270-23, you go the 9700. Then if you want the portable QRP version, which goes from HF to 70 centimeters, you want the 705. So I think that's the reason why that hasn't come out. That's the current line of radios, but I'm pretty sure that as the generations go on and the next generation of radios, you probably could see a replacement with that has 100 watts capability for sure. If you would like to see some of those recent videos, I have linked them down in the description below, or they are off to the right here, the left, the right, if you want to check them out.